interdisciplinary teams, or we need to train interdisciplinary scholars. And that is not how we manage wide-scale, broad ethical issues in any other domain where we responsibly, even approximate responsible development, design, employment, and technology. Instead, what we have, what I'm going to call an ethics ecosystem. An ethics ecosystem has these components. It has ethics infrastructure, that is easily trainable tools, processes, and procedures that you can deploy at scale with a reasonable amount of training to the average kind of person that's going to be engaging with those technologies. That's ethics infrastructure. It has education, and that is training people up to be able to use those tools in a responsible way, like the mechanisms by which we educate people into the ethics ecosystem. It has governance, which provides the sticks and carrots for people doing that education, mandating it, following those ethics infrastructure tools. It has foundational to translational research, which is thinking about the hard ethical problems and how to translate those into updating the education, the infrastructure, and the governance. And at the center, you have a smaller proportion of interdisciplinary scholars and shared language. People that can actually speak the language of many different disciplines, they can help do the facilitating across those different components. And then another core feature of functional ecosystems is two things. One is their parts are coordinated. The education component is teaching the shit. Sorry, I swear a lot. It's teaching the stuff that's going, it's teaching the relevant stuff for the ethics infrastructure. The governance is highly aligned with the educational requirements. And functioning ecosystems have a feature called enculturation. The people that are raised in those ecosystems come to see the world from the ethics perspective of that ecosystem. The best example of this, well, I'll transition in a second, is, there are lots. The military has an ethics ecosystem. Business kind of has an ethics ecosystem. Law has an ethics ecosystem. But the biggest one with substantive different ethics ecosystems is healthcare. We have one for human subject research, animal subject research, embryonic stem cells, stem cell research, clinical care. They all have their own substantive ecosystems. And if you talk to someone who's raised in those ecosystems about ethics, from a philosopher's perspective, they're talking total nonsense, but it makes total sense because it makes them very functional for operating within the ecosystem responsibly. Okay. And in the AI space, we do not have a functioning ethics ecosystem. We have all the components. So here's comparing just one of the ecosystems of health to one of the to the general ecosystem for AI. We have all the components, but they're very poorly developed. So if you want to think about ethics infrastructure and AI ethics, the best thing you're going to get is the NIST AIRMF. There's IEEE, there's all these codes coming. They are very high-level rules that no normal human can implement. You have to have significant expertise to move from the risk management framework to an operationalization that you can deploy. For policy, we'll set that aside. No, there's nothing. In fact, we've gone backwards in the last couple of years on policy in this space, although the EU is a lot better off than us. We have ethics training. We teach embedded ethics here. We put philosophers in computer science classes to teach core moral concepts. We do not teach them about the NIST AIRMF, so it is not highly aligned with the actual operationalizations that hopefully they won't be asked to deploy because they can't, but ideally they would. The conferences, we have, if anybody's ever been to FACT, it is a bunch of philosophers talking to themselves, a bunch of social scientists talking to themselves, a bunch of computer scientists talking to themselves. So it's an interdisciplinary conference, but nothing interdisciplinary is happening. The journals that publish this kind of work are not the kind of journals that will get you tenure in a philosophy department. So the discipline does not reward doing that kind of work. And we don't have shared language. If you talk to a bioethicist about informed consent, first of all, there are bioethicists, people that are not doctors, lawyers, or philosophers, but their own thing. There are like 10 AI ethicists. Northeastern employs about half of them. Not me, my junior colleagues. But you talk to a computer scientist about fairness and you're having a 45-minute conversation just to calibrate on the language. That does not happen about the word informed consent when two bioethicists, or even a bioethicist and a doctor get together. So we are deficient across all these components, and that is the appropriate approach to, so like when you're trying to think, how do I do ethics in the space? If David's asking, what do we do to get together and coordinate? You have to coordinate the building of all these components in tandem. You can do that at the local level. So now I'm going to transition into some specific projects. So for ethics infrastructure, how many people have heard of the National Internet Observatory? Okay, that's a project by David Lazar. Broadly, we recruit people to then spy on all their internet habits and let people have access to it so they can do cool research. But that's, of course, ethically fraught. And when I was brought into the project along with another ethicist who said, actually, you have to, from the ground up, build all these different components of an ethics ecosystem if you want to do this right. So we have this paper in Nature Computational Sciences with the very catchy name, Enhancing the Ethics of User-Sourced Online Data Collection and Sharing. that sort of has this chart in all the different components mapped to the different interventions we're doing at those components. So you can build local ethics ecosystems for your project. So it doesn't have to be at the level of AI. That's a fool's errand. But it is the kind of thing you can orient around, and that we do at the Ethics Institute and are happy to connect with people at IBI and doing this kind of research to build local to mid-sized ethics ecosystems. Let me say a little bit about our strong suit. You might not know this, but Northeastern has the strongest concentration and best quality AI ethics researchers from the philosophy domain in the world. And it's not particularly close. It's because we invested in junior colleagues a long time ago. Two people I'll just call out who work between Corey and philosophy are Katie Creel and Sina Fazalpour. They do really cutting edge work on fairness and mostly about homogenization. So when you deploy AI systems at scale, they can concentrate errors in particular ways that lead to injustices. Sina's got some really cool work now about the ways that using LLMs in scientific research homogenize hypothesis creation and cluster people and don't let them explore enough, and what kinds of institutional architectures can mitigate that. So how do you build a scientific lab that avoids that problem while still leveraging the benefits? So we have really strong work in fairness. My work, which is not as strong as in XAI, thinking about why should we care about transparency, who should we be transparent to, and what does that mean for XAI techniques? What does it mean that you should use a black box to unpack a black box, and when shouldn't you? We have people working on privacy, broad social interventions and their welfare impacts. How do these systems impact autonomy? And the last thing I'll close with is we do have education and training programs here. We have a lot of people jointly appointed between philosophy and other departments, and we're trying to recruit other departments as well to deploy ethics education in computer science classrooms in ways that's meaningful. And we need a core group of interdisciplinary scholars on both sides, on every side, not both sides. And so we really have worked to try to build educational interventions that accomplish those ends. We're starting to embed more in doctoral labs. I've been working a lot with Byron Wallace to talk to his graduate students more about ethical foundations in XAI. So if you're interested in bringing ethics into the stuff you do in a substantive way, please reach out. You can find my contact information. I'll probably just hand you off to someone else because I get too many emails. Thank you.